Keep joking, it'll numb the pain. Here's your look at McFarlane Toys, Mortal Kombat 11, Kabal. Fleet-footed Black Dragon Enforcer, Kabal's sprinting speed is only outpaced by his greed. He was a rookie cop until Kano tempted him to sell out his police department for cash money and a spot in the Black Dragon. Kabal has run down anyone who's crossed Kano ever since. Before getting this review started for Kabal, the first thing we want to do is figure out just how tall does the figure stand. To accomplish such feats, I'm going to bring in my trusty reliable tape measure, and we're going to measure off to the very top of Kabal's head, stopping it right there. According to the readouts, you're looking at Kabal standing 7.4 or about 7.5 inches in height. We can switch that over to centimeters, revealing that the figure is 19 centimeters exactly. Figured after that last Mortal Kombat figure review, you guys would be hooked. I'm here all day. We're going to move over Kabal, and we're going to bring in that previously looked at figure we looked at not too long ago. Here he is next to Noob Saibot. Noob is going to be a little bit shorter than Kabal, but I think if you compare them the way that they are in the video game, Kabal is a taller character, so that does make some sense why the figures themselves, Kabal is going to be noticeably taller than Noob Saibot to his left. For the figure's accessories, he comes included with a stand. The same stand you probably may recognize from other McFarlane releases, like the DC Multiverse. The only thing different here is the applied print that they put down below, indicating that this is for the Mortal Kombat line. But other than that, it's just the same display stands that we've gotten before. Still like using these, especially if you want to put your figure in some dynamic poses. So not going to fault the fact that they use the same stands over and over and over again. Sort of the way I said that sounded like I was faulting it. Quite the contrary, I'm just happy to the fact that we do get ourselves stands. Going to put that to the side. Going back to the idea of hooking you in, he comes also included with his hook swords. The swords themselves aren't carbon copies. Let me flip it around so you can see the difference between the two. One seems to have a notably further out reach of the two, while the handles and the front guards seem to be the same. Really, again, where the differences lie are more so the hooks on the ends of it. Now, these have been painted really nicely using silver paint. The handle portion of things, as you can see, has some nice sculpting going for it and has been painted a dark burgundy color. Fitting these, I find, in his hands can be a little bit problematic. I'm just going to put these down here for a second, pick the figure up. When we look at the plastic that they're using for these, especially I've noticed Kabal more so, it's a really dense plastic. In the hands especially, I guess dense plastic isn't so much the issue, but when you want to put you want to put weapons into their hands, they become a little bit more difficult. Now, to help aid this, I would maybe recommend either submerging this in hot water, or you can also take a hairdryer. Not only just good for drying your hair, hair dryers are also good for heating up hand plastic. Then you can widen the grip just a little bit easier. The reason why is normally you'd be able to take a sword and just start from the end and slide it straight through. Well, there's obviously the stopping point right here. So instead, you have to make your entryway in about halfway up the handle. Pry the fingers away from the palm as best as you can, and then kind of get that quickly in there. Again, I may just try to take the hairdryer. I haven't done it just yet. I've been pretty successful, I find, trying to do it the way I was doing it, the more painful way. But yeah, definitely would take a hairdryer. You don't have to make the noise while you're doing that. Go ahead then and take the other hook sword. Pry the hands away from the palm. Again, just fit that into his hands. There you go. Because the figure also does have double hinges on the elbows, you can get the poses of, depending on how you want to have it look, maybe directly from the game. At the beginning of the thing, I had the two hook swords hooked together. You could do that as well if you want to. All you're really just doing is hooking one into the other, just like that. Or again, you can just have them further away. The plastic, I've noticed when they've used these, is a little much more softer, more pliable. It's not necessarily a bad thing, although taking it out of the plastic tray, you may notice that one of these may be warped. You may have to heat that back in place. But at least going the route of a softer plastic means that they're less likely to break, even if you're going willy-nilly and bending it like I'm just doing, right? It's more sort of to show you. I wouldn't normally do this with my figures. I think that's ridiculous. But it's just to show you, to drive home the idea, beating a dead horse, that it's using a softer plastic. Okay, so let's go ahead and take these back out of his hands. We'll just put them down for the time being. There is, by the way, no other place where you can store the swords. You can't really hook them in anywhere necessarily. So you will want to display them with the figure in the figure's hands. Getting a closer look at now Kabal. I have to come clean about something. I'm not really a big fan of this design of Kabal. I prefer Kabal actually from Mortal Kombat 3. That's the way I like Kabal. Sort of with just kind of the black portion of the lower breathing apparatus and then like those googly goggle eyes. This is kind of more of a fully cybernetic looking Kabal. Some you may like this look of figure. Congratulations. I just kind of like the Mortal Kombat 3 Kabal just a little bit more. In that way, I guess, I don't know if you would say I'm just outdated in my thought process or I'm more of a purist. I kind of like going with purist. That sounds a little nicer. The detailing for his face, though again, not the preferred look for me at least, does, I will say to its credit, look nice. The use of silver paint is really a nice touch, to the point actually where I feel like the mask would be removable. Some nice sculpt work to the sense that it does almost even look like the mask is applied over top of his existing face. Just in case you're curious though, it isn't removable, so don't try to force this off of his face. It would have been a nice touch if they could have put like an Easter egg on there, similar to the original movie Maniac's Jason Voorhees that had the removable mask. Remember that? Did a review of it if you guys want to check that out. But I do like the little hosing that runs from the front of the breathing apparatus to the back of his mask. Little slitted eyes there as well, painted nicely in the red. It is a nice looking head sculpt. I will say though, one of my takeaways from looking at this figure, I've spent maybe a good couple of hours. I generally like to take the figures out of the packaging and spend some good quality time with them, not immediately just hitting record. My takeaway when I was looking at this figure was that while the sculpting is good, I feel like he really lacks in the department of paint. Now, this was one of the ongoing issues with McFarlane toys as a whole, is that some of the figures are really good in sculpt, but then they really miss the mark when it comes to the paint. Now, when you're looking at this, it'd be hard-pressed to see that there's a place on here that's missing paint. It's got the more olive-colored green under top, and then, of course, it's got the silver contraption over top of it, and then, of course, he's got kind of a ragged top torso piece, kind of like shoulder pad piece. So it does have color. I'm not going to fault it for that. But I feel like here, like in the shoulders areas, and especially when you get down to the lower skirting, which carries over the same green, it really does lack a lot. What would I do in order to fix this? I mean, you could probably just add a dark wash over top of it. I guess ideally, you could really, it seemed almost sort of the solution to the problem ongoingly, like just add a wash to it, add a wash to it. But really, in a case like that, sometimes just taking a black wash, black paint, just very light, and painting over top of it, you could probably bring out a lot more of the details. It sort of feels like the figure has taken a first pass when it comes to paint, but then they haven't gone in there and just touched up some of those details. So while things like the hoses and like the front section of his armor painted well, I just feel like it lacks a little something. It misses a little bit of that love. Especially when you're looking at his arms, for example. This is the part I find that misses so much more of the paint. It almost looks like what they've done is they've added a slight bluish tint over top of the existing white plastic. I would have even gone that one step further and just added a little more on top of it. Because especially when you're looking at from head to toe, maybe up close and personal is probably not the best approach to make. But when you're seeing it really from a distance, it feels like it's lacking a lot of paint, especially, I guess, more so from here down. The boots are missing it. Again, like the green skirting, I think probably could have afforded just a little bit of darker paint, maybe a bit of a darker green that they could have just brushed on top of it. Something just to enhance the mold. The molding is not so much the problem, and I really don't have an issue with the mold of the figure. It's really just where the paint feels like it's coming just up a little bit short, just a little bit too short for my liking. But like I said, the sculpting is really good. Like the detailing that they've done to the skirting. I mean, you can lift that up as well if you want to see what it looks like underneath. There isn't necessarily a place from a sculpt standpoint where I feel like things got rushed or left off. I mean, it's all there, but I really think just to add just that little bit of parsley to your main course, just adding a little bit of paint, I think really would have enriched the experience of looking at Kabal. He does have these spikes. Not so much spikes, the pieces that's sticking out from the tops of his glove. As you're rotating the figure, which we won't talk about the articulation just yet, this is something that you're probably going to be not drawing blood, but you're going to be pricking yourself every single time you're moving these hands. Actually, the same thing as well when you're coming to the knees. There are a few little prickly points for Kabal. So sort of when I am going to be getting down to the articulation of the figure, you'll probably see that I'm going to approach it by going down below here rather than getting my hand anywhere near those spikes. Especially that down below here. When I bring the leg forward, I've already a couple of times not punctured my finger, but certainly I felt it when I brought that leg forward. Speaking of Kabal's articulation, were we speaking of? Speaking of Kabal's articulation, his head is on a ball joint, so it does allow the head to rotate all the way around. It moves down quite a bit. I mean, you get a real low look with Kabal. The head back, however, though, and moving up, not so much. Gets to about that point. I think a lot of it has to do with the fact that the way the hair's been sculpted, and of course you got the high collar piece on the back of his torso, that does really limit moving the head further past this point. See? Right there. You can also rock the head back and forth for a nice angle. But I think when it comes to displaying, I'm probably going to have the head low like this, and then with the hook swords in his hands. Nice. As for the arms rotate all the way around, at least to the credits, though they're not super painted. The shoulder parts of his torso are softer plastic, so it doesn't necessarily prevent the arms from rotating all the way around. Also, you can bring the arms outward. You may also see as I'm rotating the arms, I struggle a little bit. They're a little on the tight side. They almost seem like they got a ratchet joint on the inside. But he does also have the shoulder crunch. See the little shoulder cups that are inside? The socketed joints technically, in theory, would allow the arms to move forward. The problem is his torso is already so big, as well as his shoulders, that you really can't move those arms inward any more than just this little bit here. Almost too little to really count. He does have a swivel, and it's actually concealed rather nicely underneath his short sleeve. The arms rotate all the way around. Underneath that sleeve, he does have a double hinge on the elbow. Watch for the spike. You can rotate the hands all the way around, and you can also hinge them back and forth. Now the upper torso, let's just get his arms down out of the way here. His upper torso is on a ball joint. For a second, I almost thought, well, why would they have put a hinge joint so close to his torso? Then I realized that was just his wrinkle. But I thought for a second he actually had a secondary ball joint. He does, but it's further down here, though, just underneath the sashed belt. Then again, because he's using softer plastic similar to his top torso, the legs aren't restricted. I mean, in fact, you can move a nice solid Van Damme splits with Kabal. You can move the legs forward. You can move the legs back. He has a swivel at the top of the thigh where that's attached to the socket. You can't move it too much, though. But at least he does have a rotation just underneath the black area here. Kind of a nice, again, way that they've concealed it. It's slightly more baggier on the top and not as baggy down below. And they've hidden the joint just underneath that. Avoiding not pricking myself, he does have the double hinge on the knee. Careful of this. And he does also have, like I said, that swivel point there. The feet. Now, okay, so here's one problem I have with Kabal's feet. It's more so that the way they've designed the figure's costume, really. It's this little flap of the boot right here, right where I'm running my thumb along it. I mean, it looks like a nice finished boot, and it hides the point of articulation, but it does limit. Sure, he has toe articulation, and we'll talk about the fact he does have the ankle pivot, but the real problem is you can't move the foot further forward. You can move it down fine and good, but you can't hinge it up. You get to about there. So if you want to have him in a lunge forward pose, you can't quite pull it off. Even though this is soft, slightly softer plastic, you really don't have as much luxury when it comes to his ankle pivot, moving it up and down this way. Despite not really liking this particular costume choice for Kabal, I'm still, maybe someone would say, set in the ways, stuck in the past, maybe a couple of not so nice ways of saying it. I kind of, again, like Kabal looking like he did from Mortal Kombat 3. As this look of Kabal isn't terrible, I really think from a figure standpoint where it lacks a lot is in the paint. Sculpt is good, the build and proportions of Kabal are nice, but he really does lack a lot of the paint. More so in the green. I think it's in the green areas is where you really see, and you really say to yourself, could they not have gone back in there with a second coat of paint to really bring out some of the details that they sculpted there in the first place? While admittingly, this may not be my favorite look for Kabal, I'm sure that right now there's some screaming viewer, stop living in the past, live for the now, old man. That's a bit harsh. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with having a specific favorite look for a character from one of the games. I mean, admittingly, when you look at where Scorpion and Sub-Zero started from in the original first 3 Mortal Kombats to where they look like now, yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with saying, you know what, I kind of like the way that this character looks. Like, I'm still all for Scorpion and Sub-Zero looking like ninjas the way they did in the first 3 Mortal Kombat games. For me, I like Kabal from Mortal Kombat 3. There's nothing necessarily to say that there's something wrong with this one. If you like the look of this Kabal, then that's all the power to you. I will say, though, he ends up translating to be a pretty decent looking figure when you got him on display, especially when you've got the hooked swords in his hands, the way that he has in the game. Where the figure, I feel, comes up a little bit short is not necessarily the sculpt. I'm not really going to fault McFarlane Toys for sculpting really mean-looking figures, and mean being a good thing. Where I feel sometimes some oversight happens with some of these figures that get released is sort of the approach when it comes to the paint. When you're looking at a character like Kabal, you're basically getting the stock paint of the green, that khaki color, and the silver, but I feel like there's something missed, a little bit of finesse. Maybe going in there with just a touch-up of paint, adding a darker wash, I think really would have enhanced the sculpting of the Kabal here. I don't fault the sculpt. I feel like, just again, it's the paint that sort of under-delivers how good these figures could actually work when you've got them on display. Kabal is a great-looking example of a character that looks good from a mold standpoint, but then again, just lacks a little bit of that, I'm going to put it in bunny ears, finesse. Just a little bit of extra paint wash on top of that could have enhanced this figure oh so much more. I hope those screaming viewers aren't still saying living in the past. That's so me. What do you guys think of Mortal Kombat 11's Kabal? Let me know down below in the comments section. And you know what? Maybe for your video question for today, what's your favorite character from Mortal Kombat? And which game is your favorite look for that character? I always like reading your comments down below. If you guys are also new to this channel, enjoying all the content you're seeing, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below. Move on over with your hooked sword and make sure you hit that bell notification so you get those friendly reminders of when new videos will be popping up. We will also be looking at some more Mortal Kombat figures, and we will also be looking at more McFarlane toy figures. So make sure you're keeping your peepers peeled to this channel. And as always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.